ClanHub is filled with rich history, layered with complex politics, characters, and conflicts. But what set the groundwork for modern CH? While it is commonly known that CH started in 2018 with the outbreak of World War I, what isn't known is the origins of the factions involved in the conflict. This video will explore the theories regarding the most likely events that took place before recorded history. The time before recorded history can be divided into 3 eras. For simplicity, I will refer to these eras as the Ancient Era, Medieval Era, and Early Modern Era, to represent the level of technology that will be present during these time periods. Without further ado, we will begin at the so-called Ancient Era. Before recorded history, most of the world was full of small states and tribes. The first places to have some form of larger civilization would have most likely been Alphania and Severassia, each having various small states across the continent. Not much is known about what could have transpired during this time. However, the earliest known events are theorized to be the founding of Christianity, and the existence of a large Slavic empire in the north. Christianity is theorized to have been founded somewhere in northern Ubria, possibly near Valley. The religion would not gain much popularity among the native Ubrian tribes. However, Christianity spread across the world as far as the Western Island. This can be explained by the existence of a Slavic empire in the north, spanning from the north of the island across Severassia and to northern Aquathia and Ubria. Christianity would spread throughout this empire, with most of the lands under their control converting to Christianity. Christianity would also spread into Napoleon through trade, as well as the Coalite Islands, once they made contact with each other. Over the years, the Slavic Empire would decline, losing the territory outside of its mainland, which would return to the native tribes living there, with the Slavs being unable to hold onto the far-off provinces through difficult years. However, in some places, such as in the west, Slavic culture remained. Due to it being the main Slavic continent, and being located furthest north, the northern continent would in future be known as Severassia. As we reach the medieval era, many feudal kingdoms would be developing across areas like Acolitus and the island to the west of it, including one nation which the island would later be named after, Arstotzka. While not much is known about these early kingdoms, we can assume that many conflicts would take place between them, with Arstotzka's main rival being Kolechia. However, no single state would be able to definitively establish dominance. We can also determine that most of the states in Acolitus would have a culture similar to Central Europe, while Arstotzka and a few surrounding it would have a Slavic culture. However, the culture of the rest of the states on the island is not known. Meanwhile, the Coalite Islands would continue to seek closer relations with each other, becoming closely intertwined culturally, developing a Germanic culture, and being allies of each other for a long time. While they did this, however, the first colonies were set up in Ubria from Alpha Island, becoming independent after expanding and considering themselves to have outgrown their roots on the island. As for other places, Aquathia would remain tribal, however developing a Latin or Italian culture. Kingdoms in Napoleon would develop a British culture. Meanwhile in Central, uncontacted tribes would stay in the southwestern portion, as the rest of the island would remain uninhabited. As we move into the early modern era, first came the invention of firearms, and with that, the colonists in Ubria expanded their territory, easily conquering the entire continent. due to having far superior weapons to the native tribes they were up against. They likely held their state together with a racial hierarchy, placing Coelite descendants above the native Ubrians. Around this time, the kingdoms in Napolia would unite. In the west, Arstotzka and Kolechia would become the two dominant powers on the island. However, neither would be able to completely defeat the other, despite fighting many wars against each other. As time passed, the idea of a union between the Coelite Islands was considered, as they became increasingly intertwined throughout the years. After the invention of firearms, naturally came the invention of armored vehicles and other modern technology, including the first ideas of spaceflight. Around this time, Alphania would be united under the banner of the Alpha space program, from which the continent got its modern namesake. The ASP was the first space program which unified the continent with the aim of continuing progress towards space exploration. In Severossia, any remnant of the Slavic Empire had faded long ago, and their empire had been declining for many years. Shortly after the formation of the ASP, a communist revolution took place in Severossia, seizing power quickly and establishing the Soviet space program in opposition to ASP's capitalist way of life. Meanwhile, in Ubria, the National Socialist space program was formed, which was in opposition to the other two space programs and their ideologies. The three space programs would enter into a brief space race with each other, each developing their first suborbital spacecraft with the intention of being the first to colonize the stars and spread their ideas throughout the cosmos. As for the minor powers, Arstotzka was close to conquering their island from other powers. After undergoing a communist revolution of their own, following the formation of the SSP. By this point, the Coelite Islands were almost unified, and in Napolia, the government was considering founding their own space program. It is at this point that we arrive at 2018, where we will move from theory to reality. As with the invention of spaceflight and modern technology, so came the beginning of recorded history. And in the following episodes, we will see what new benefits and challenges these new technologies would bring.